Welcome back, everyone, to another round of Cooking with Josh. And right now, we're going to learn how to bake a Japanese souffle cheesecake. Yes, that's that light, fluffy, airy cheesecake that you've seen all around town, especially Uncle Tetsu's cheesecake downtown. It's a popular spot for tourists and locals alike. And so we're gonna try to mimic that cheesecake. I have to admit, this was a little difficult at first, but if you follow these steps, you're bound to get it right. And we're gonna try to do that right now. And also, if you're able to do this cheesecake, you're also able to do, you also will be able to bake the Japanese souffle pancakes, which have become really popular also. So let's get at it and let's see what you will need for this recipe. So let's talk about all the ingredients you will need to bake your Japanese souffle cheesecake. But before we do that, let's make sure to preheat our oven to 200 degrees Celsius. Next, we will need 60 grams of sugar that we're going to divide it into two bowls, so 30 each. We will need 120 grams of cream cheese. So we have 250 grams is a full brick, so just a little under half a brick. We will need 4 eggs, 4 large eggs. We will need 60 milliliters of either whipping cream or whole milk. So we've opted for the whipping cream here. It's just going to give it a little more creaminess. Also 40 grams of plain flour and 30 grams of butter, unsalted butter. Make sure both the Philadelphia cream cheese and the butter are at room temperature. And also we are going to be putting a splash of white vinegar. And white vinegar is going to be used to help us build that meringue when we are beating the white of the egg. It'll help us achieve those stiff peaks much quicker. For this recipe, you will need 4 eggs, and you're going to need to separate the eggs into the egg white and the yolk. So when you separate your eggs, make sure that you don't get any of the egg yolk into the egg white mixture, as it will make it very difficult when you're whipping up the egg white to get that meringue with those stiff peaks, which is very necessary in order to get your cheesecake nice and jiggly. So when you're separating an egg, just make sure when you crack the egg open to keep your yolk on one side, and then just move the yolk back and forth. And as I do this, you'll see that the egg yolk just drops slowly. And there we go. Okay, so we're just gonna drop that in there and we're ready to go. As for our baking utensils, so we have here a 8x3 tin. So make sure to not use a springform pan, as that will cause, I've learned that the hard way, it will actually cause a lot of water to seep through. Even if, I know you may see online that there'll be suggestions to place tin foil around the springform pan. I've done that before, and water still seeps through. And there's also the other option. So this one's a very interesting option where you could use your rice cooker. So with the rice cooker, all you would do is you would grease this right here, your little pot inside, just with butter, and that would actually cook your Japanese souffle cheesecake. So either option's available. If you're going for looks and trying to achieve that Uncle Tetsu look, then we're gonna go with the regular pan, and that's what we're gonna do today. Okay, so we're gonna start off with our first bowl, and in our first bowl we're going to add our butter. And we're gonna start mixing the butter. Getting it nice and smooth. Then we're going to add our cream cheese. So we have a nice creamy consistency. We're now going to start adding our egg yolks slowly as we mix. Just get our spatula to make sure we get all of our egg yolk mixture out of there, out of the bowl. As in baking, it's very important to be precise as it's a chemistry, and all measurements, it's not like cooking with baking, as you might already know. You want to be precise as possible. Okay, there we go. That's all in. And we'll just scrape the sides of our bowl. Get that all in. Okay, and we're going to finish mixing. We're actually going to sift our flour. So we want to make sure that we don't have any lumps in our flour. So we're just going to place our flour and sift in our flour. Okay, we're almost there. And we're left with our lumps. So put that off to the side, and we are going to mix and incorporate this mixture. Make sure there aren't any lumps. Now time to pour in our milk. So we're putting in, it's actually whipping cream, and I'm just going to use the spatula to make sure we get all this incorporated along the edges. We don't want to miss any of this great looking batter. Okay, so now I'm actually going to add half of our sugar, and it's time to turn on the mixer. So we have our first bowl all ready to go. So we'll leave that here. And we're going to start off on our next bowl. So we're going to start by adding our egg white mixture into this bowl. So I usually like to get a nice tall bowl. Find it a little easier when I'm trying to beat my meringues. And we're going to slowly start to add the sugar. as I start mixing. And also, I forgot to mention, please do wash your mixer, as we didn't want to incorporate any of the egg yolk mixture into our egg whites, or else we're not going to get those stiff peaks as I mentioned before. So I'm going to start to increase the speed and pulse it on high. So this is a process that's going to take about 5 minutes. And I am actually going to add a splash of white vinegar, as it's going to help the process. And I'll see you back in 5. So it was a little more than 5 minutes. If you're having issues forming your meringue, just add a little more sugar, but don't go overboard, as the Japanese cheesecake is known for being less sweet than your traditional cheesecake. So the test to make sure that you have created your meringue properly is to place it upside down. And if it doesn't fall, you're good. So it's almost like Dairy Queen when they give you your Blizzard, they flip that upside down and it's nice and stiff. So we have our meringue and we have our egg yolk mixture, and we are going to incorporate the egg yolk mixture into the meringue mixture into our egg yolk. So we're going to just add all of our meringue. And when we mix, we're going to actually fold in our mixture. We want to make sure that we don't deflate the meringue, as we want to have that light, airy feel. And by over mixing, you will break the texture. Okay, so we have all of our meringue in here. Just a little more along the sides. Okay. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fold it in slowly. I like to do a circular motion when we get to this part. And you can see that it's starting to incorporate. And we're almost there. You can start seeing it's come together. And we are good. So now we're actually going to place our mixture into our pan, and normally you would actually cut a circular piece of parchment paper and place it right at the bottom. I actually don't have any on hand, so I just add a little bit of extra butter at the bottom of my tin. So I'm going to add in our mixture. Okay, almost. You have it almost all in. Just get a little on the sides. So you don't want to overfill your tin. You want to make sure that there is 2 centimeters from the top of the mixture to the tin. Okay, so that is good. We are going to want to tap our mixture onto the counter to remove any air bubbles. And what I like to do also is to use the spatula and just do a little zigzag pattern, and that is to get rid of any air bubbles in our mixture. Okay, so we are good to place this in our oven. So we actually are going to cook this cake in 3 stages. Firstly, we are going to cook it at 200 Celsius for 15 minutes. Be right back. I almost forgot to mention that you want to have another tin so that you'll be able to place your cheesecake in a hot water bath. So add water into your pan, and then we are going to place our tin into our oven. We're now, 15 minutes is up, and so now we're going to lower our oven temperature to 140 degrees for 30 minutes. And once that's complete, we are going to turn the oven off and let the cheesecake sit there for another 30 minutes without opening the oven door. Our 30 minutes is up, and so we're going to take a look to see how our cheesecake is doing. And we have a nice brown top to the cheesecake, so I am going to leave that in there for another half an hour. Okay, here we have it. Our half an hour is up, and look at that nice color we have on our cheesecake. So we're gonna just take it out of the take the pan out of the hot bath, and we're gonna let it rest for half an hour, and then we will come back here to plate. Okay, here we have it. Here is our Japanese souffle cheesecake, Uncle Josh's. Okay, so let's take our cheesecake out of our pan, and this would have been much easier if I did have parchment paper. So I did cut along the edges with a knife. So I'm just gonna flip it over, so it should easily come off. And here we have it, our Uncle Josh Japanese souffle cheesecake. And we're just gonna top it off with a little bit of icing sugar, little dollops. And end it off with maybe some fruit. And there you go. And let's cut into it. Already feel that jiggle, and it's a nice texture, very airy. There we go, we just cut right into it, and there we go. Nice, airy, and fluffy, very light. Hope you enjoyed watching my recipe on Japanese souffle cheesecake, and if you do try this at home, let me know. Take care. Have a great one.